At Cannes this past week, there was a debate that opened up at the film festival, and that debate revolved around the theatrical experience of a movie or the idea that you can watch it on TV, on your phone, whenever you want. And the French, as I'm sure you know, are maybe the most intense cinephiles in the world, and the theatrical experience for them is like going to a church or a museum. Two movies produced by Netflix, both by pretty good directors, Noah Baumbach and Bong Joon-ho, were included in competition. Not simply premiering at Cannes, but in actual competition, even though these two movies were not going to have a theatrical release. French theater owners protested, and the festival organizers backtracked and said any movie not released theatrically in France would not be allowed in competition at future festivals. Now, this opened up the main debate for the duration of the festival, with everyone chiming in from Ted Sarandos to Alejandro Inarritu defending Netflix to Pedro Almodovar, who was the head of the jury, saying that the size of a film should not be smaller than the chair you're sitting on. Will Smith, who was one of the jurors, did not agree with Pedro and said, Netflix has had no effect on what my kids go to the movie theater to watch, and that Netflix has broadened his children's global cinematic comprehension. And of course, Will Smith has a deal with Netflix, so, of course he'd say that. But Joon-ho said he didn't mind if people saw his film on a big screen or a small screen. But more people than not were siding with Almodovar at Cannes and argued that Cannes competition should be about theatrical titles only. And final note, Netflix plans to make, I think, 50 films this year. So the debate is about digital disruption and the industry's relationship to Silicon Valley, the fate of the theatrical experience, and what kind of screen content deserves to be included in a film festival or an awards ceremony. Dana, this is an existential fight in a way. It's essentially holding on to a past and cherishing a reverence for a narrative that is ending. The future is the disruptors, and the disruptors versus the establishment and the traditionalists. Does that sound familiar to anybody right now? What do you think about this?
Well, I think, as you know and many know, I'm a huge proponent for the demise of theaters to an extent. I think the theatrical experience will never go away. It's something that it's a date night. It's a good time out. It's going out in the summer for air conditioning. It's a variety of reasons to go out and do something and enjoy something, particularly like a big movie like studios are making now is something you want to see on a big screen with the crazy sound. But as technology advances, both from what people can have in their home theaters, from a large 4K television for very little money and surround sound, and everything can be streamed right to you, I think our business is cannibalizing itself in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of different tangents I can go off on this, but I'll try to keep it more focused on just me personally. A lot of types of movies that I've done, some that you've mentioned, like Social Network or Captain Phillips or 21, those movies I would not be able to get made today in the traditional studio sense. But with places like Netflix and all the others that will come, and that's the big thing. This is like when Steve Jobs holds up that iPhone 10 years ago and everyone went, holy shit, he touched the screen and it moves. That's where we're at now. Now every phone has a screen that if you touch it and it doesn't move, there's something wrong with it. So we're only in the infancy of where this is going to go. And Netflix is the first, and Amazon and Hulu, and there's going to be many, many more that are going to come. So what that does, though, for a creator like myself, it gives me a lot more places to get the type of material that I'm known for making made. With the way the studios are now with their tentpole movies, that's the only thing that we can really get made is IP. And if you don't control a big piece of IP, you're kind of stuck, and you're slipping one through the net when no one's looking to get something that I like to make to get that made. I don't go see the big blockbuster movies generally. That's just nothing against them, and it's great that they do well for the business, because the better the business do, the better chance I have of getting my other films made. So things like streaming services and Netflix and Hulu's and Amazons of the world, they're going to be the future of our business. It's the same as like when everything started going digital shooting, when a lot of filmmakers were like, I will never shoot digital. I would only ever shoot film, until they start to realize the advantages of it.
Yes.
And then everybody starts going to, and as the technology progressed and got better, everyone started going to digital. The same thing is going to start to happen even more so than it is now. And you're going to see more and more going that way, not only because of the technology and the abilities and opportunities it gives to creators, but also to what it gives to the business. But also, like, I have a 4-year-old daughter. She works an iPad better than anything. That's the only thing she knows is where she watches her content.
Right.
She goes to the theater to see, Cinderella or whatever the new animation movie is, but she's not really, into it as much as she would be just sitting there watching her iPad. That's how she knows it. But the bigger issue that I've faced and that I have with the theater experience is, it's just not a good experience anymore. You go and there's somebody on their cell phone in front of you, or you there's somebody talking, or there's people going in and out. We live in this DVR society now, and basically that's what it is. So it's if you want to take a piss, you can't when you're at the theater because you're afraid you're going to miss a pivotal plot point. Although a lot of the films that are in theaters now don't have pivotal plot points that you couldn't put back together if you've gone for 5 minutes, but having it at home, you can pause it and get up, grab a beer if you want, have some friends over, start it at 7:06 as opposed to paying $20 for parking and $15 for popcorn and, the night out that it costs, where this is an issue I think that studios are starting to realize now. Then I've said this and I've gotten in trouble for saying this, but if I had the ability, I would charge theaters for my content. Right now it's the other way around. They take 50% of the box and they take all the concessions.
Right.
I would make them pay me to screen my movies, and I would take 50% of their concessions.
Yeah.
Because without my content, they're not selling those concessions for $20 popcorn or however much they're charging for that, and and they're not in business without that. Right now, they have a stranglehold on our business, and so they dictate and they require certain things for releases, and they have too much of a hold on our business, particularly the day and date releasing. And day and date releasing is money that's being left on the table right now by the studios and for our business. I hardly ever go to theaters right now, but because I have a 4-year-old daughter and I have to get a babysitter, and everything I said before about finding parking and paying for parking and paying for the concessions and and having to be there at a certain time, and you drink that big ass thing of soda and then you got to piss after the first act and you can't. You sit there and your bladder's about to burst, and it's just not a fun experience.
Right.
But if I could stay at home, my 60-inch 4K television, surround sound, and it used to be like, high society. Now that's not a big deal. That's, in a lot of people's homes, or, a decent system. And I could start it when I wanted to start it, pause it when I wanted to pause it, have a few friends over. I'd pay a premium for that. I'd pay $60, $70, $80, $90, depending. And I think the market should determine what that cost is. So if there's a demand for it, let it go as high as it can go. If there's not, let it drop down, because right now that's money that's being left on the table that the studios aren't getting from me and many, many others.
So I assume, like me, there are no movies recently that have blown you away. Or is being blown away by a movie a kind of outdated American narrative and only applies to people of a certain demo? Because when I hear you say that about controlling the film, I wonder what's lost by that. Because I used to think that part of the power of going to a theater was that you can't control the film. It controls you. It starts when it wants to. It's not going to stop for you. It's on a vast screen that dwarfs you, and you kind of have to give yourself over to it. In many ways, it's a very passive experience, and so you let this thing wash over you, giving up that control in a way and falling into the movie. Whereas when you are stopping a film or you're watching in your bedroom, and I've noticed that I've gotten used to this now. It's the only way to see a lot of movies that I want to see, of course, but I notice that, does that minimize the power of what I'm watching?
To a point, I think you're right. However, I always say that if I'm not doing that, that's how I know the movie's good.
Yes.
If a movie can, it used to be when I went to the theater and I sat down and watched a movie, and if I wasn't thinking about how did they get that location, or I wonder how much they paid that actor, or I wonder how they did this, if I wasn't thinking that, that's how I knew it was a good movie. That was like the litmus test for me, where I just got lost in the film.
Right.
Now it's the same for me if I'm just sitting there and just not worrying about anything but sucked into it. And unfortunately, I think it says something more about the quality of our films as opposed as opposed to anything of our attention span or us having that control.
Yes.
I think if the material is good, I'm going all the way through it. And where I really notice it now is television. And there's so much good television. When I sit down, it's like when I used to go into the theater to sit down for theater. You're sitting in, you're going for the ride. It's like everyone's set, everyone ready to go, here we go. That's what I do with television now. Mm-hmm. And it's like, all right, you're done with your Twitter, you're done with Instagram,
right.
Everyone then put your phones down, and we start and we go. And it doesn't get interrupted. Movies, it's like, okay, it's going to be 2 hours. Let's see how good it is. And then like, all right, half hour, 45 minutes in, who needs to take a piss and pause and
I mean, but it's also, I mean, I do think that brief moment of whatever was called the golden age of television is over. It's just the age of television now, with thousands, it seems, of scripted shows, a sea of content that we seem to be drowning in. I talk with people every week about shows I've never heard of that they love, and they said that I've got to watch. And I don't know if it's an age thing either, because my boyfriend, who is 30 years old, didn't go to movies for the reason that I went to them. I mean, I was in the 70s, so we got The Deer Hunter, we got Apocalypse Now, we got Taxi Driver. Great films that you would want to go to a theater to see. But he grew up in a different time, and so as a kid and a teenager, he went to have fun, be entertained, see whatever was popular, let's see the number one movie, and, he was a literature major at Iowa, and he's appreciated the movie education that I gave him, showing him the Godfather and the Last Picture Show and, Barry Lyndon and various De Palma movies. But he's just not that interested in new movies. And he sees video games like the latest Final Fantasy that he's been playing as the new movie. That is his new movie. And he made that vow a couple of years ago after staggering out of a Marvel movie that he is done with new movies. He doesn't want to see these anymore. He's done with them. But I was going to ask you, what American movies have you really liked lately? And I realized I don't have an answer to that. You must not have an answer to that.
I mean, something that really stands out and is like, you have to see this movie.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I don't even know if I can say that fully about the foreign movies that finally get released here or certain documentaries. I mean, it's really gotten to the point where narrative American movie making has hit an all-time low.